Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Fergal Armstrong, and welcome to this episode of Cracking Addiction. And once again, we have with us the good Dr. Laura Petracek. Hello, Laura. How are you?
Good, Fergal. How about yourself?
I'm well. So I thought we'd explore interpersonal effectiveness as part of dialectical behavioral therapy. And when I was taught DBT techniques, one of the techniques for interpersonal effectiveness that I came across was the Dear Man technique, which is a way of actually, making a request or saying no. Now, first of all, why is this technique important? Why does it even exist within DBT training?
This technique is important because it deals with our interactions with others, our relationships with others. And this is a huge area where most people coming into therapy or treatment struggle with. And this specific tool helps a client walk through in their mind, okay, what's the script, or what am I, because that's one of the suggestions, is to write it out or to kind of guide you into terms of what you're going to say, what you're going to assert or say no to.
Yeah, and I suppose patients, everyone really has difficulty saying no sometimes, or assert or asking for something sometimes. But I think there are certain patient groups that have more difficulty, and I think people with borderline personality disorder and also substance use disorders may fall into that category. What do you think to that?
I think so, especially people with BPD and substance use disorder, because they're struggle more with people pleasing and struggle more with saying no. And so this skill would be very helpful to them.
Yeah. And if you're not able to say no, that means that you're going to be rejected and you're not going to have love. And actually, to actually have a relationship of respect, that does involve the space of being able to say no, or for that matter, being able to ask effectively, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But a lot of people with substance use disorders or borderline personality disorder are afraid to say no, because then they're afraid that will end the relationship, or they're afraid of rejection. So that adds to the fear of saying no or to setting a boundary. And then, of course, it adds to resentment and just kind of messes with the interaction. It poisons it, so to speak, with the resentment and not being clear about what they want or don't want.
Sure. Now, I was taught in this context the mnemonic Dear Man, but I believe that you have a variation on that.
Right. I have Dear Woman. So, I mean, do you want me to go through the DEARWOMAN?
Well, I think
just
so. So that's what the mnemonic is.
You're right. That's
That's what your mnemonic is. I mean, we may not get it covered entirely in one episode, but let's work our way through Dear Woman. So let's start off with D. What does D stand for?
So D stands for the details of your request. And it sets up the specific situation that you're speaking about and what you're going to be asking for. So, for example, let's say your request is for a friend who's always late when meeting you for coffee. So that's the details of the situation. Okay. And your request is to please be on time. But that comes later. But right now, that's the details of the situation.
Yeah. So you're waiting. I mean, when I think about this, I think about, someone being asked to wash the dishes. And, for me, it's all about stating the facts. When you're having the Dear Man conversation with someone, it's stating the facts. I noticed that the dishes weren't washed.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're taking away the it's a statement of fact. You're not actually, accusing anyone of being lazy. It's just, I
Yeah,
noticed the dishes weren't washed.
I
Or
like
you might
that.
say, I asked you to wash the dishes and I noticed that the dishes weren't washed. These
Right.
are
Or
very much facts in the relationship.
exactly. Or I noticed that
Yeah.
you weren't on time. I like that.
Yeah. Or, I asked
Yeah,
you to be here at 2 o'clock. I noticed that you
right.
arrived at, I mean, I
To
wouldn't even say, I
explain
noticed
and
you
check.
here on time. I asked you to be here at 2 o'clock and you were here at 2:15. Yeah. So it's for me, it's the D is describe. It's a describe in a very non-emotional way, purely sticking to the facts that are unarguable.
Right. Just the facts,
Mm.
like Mr.
Just the
Spock.
facts, ma'am.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
what is he on? Okay, Dragnet. Yeah. Dragnet.
Is that
Just
the
the
guy that
facts.
said just the facts, ma'am? Yeah,
Yeah.
someone said to me there was a movie and I can never remember it. So yeah, Dragnet.
It,
Who
it, it
starred in
was a
Dragnet?
series in the 60s in America.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Just the facts, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Just the
And I
facts.
have him in my book somewhere. But yeah, it's called
Right.
Dragnet, and the star
Dragnet. Dragnet.
totally eludes me at the moment.
All right. Anyway. Yeah. So for me, the D is just the facts, ma'am. Describe the situation with just the facts. What's the E? Talk to us about the E.
The E is about expressing opinions and emotions that add more context to strengthen your situation or strengthen your position. So
Yeah.
just, I noticed I asked you to do the dishes, you didn't do the dishes. I'm upset that you didn't do them, or this seems to be a recurring issue. Maybe to add a little bit more detail to it.
It's not really an excuse to fly off the handle, isn't it? This is not the time to say, and you never do the dishes, and I feel
No,
rejected,
it's
and
it's not a time to. One thing that I really like about Marsha Linehan, and I remind clients this constantly: don't attack.
yeah, don't
So to
attack.
bring up, oh, you never do them. Oh, that's attacking. Nope,
It is, yeah,
is not effective. And I
yeah,
even remind myself that because just those two words
yeah,
mean a lot. Don't attack. Nope, don't go there. Don't go there, Laura.
yeah,
Because it's not
yeah.
effective. It doesn't go anywhere. It usually pushes the other person away and just isn't helpful to what you're trying to deal with.
For me, the E also means explore. So I noticed you didn't do the dishes. I asked you to do the dishes. I noticed the dishes weren't done. Is there any reason why they weren't done?
No, I really like that because that is a different approach than attacking because that's bringing you
Hmm.
forward in a positive way. Like you're curious, hey,
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what happened, or trying to give someone the benefit of the doubt
Hmm.
instead of attacking them, trying to
Yeah.
see if there's something else going on, like maybe they just couldn't stand the smell of whatever was cooking. I don't know. And sometimes it's
Hmm.
just they just don't want to do them, but you don't necessarily know that until you explore
Yeah.
it. So that's why I really like that.
What does the A stand for?
The A stands for assert, by asking or by saying no.
Hmm.
So write down either what you want to say or have like a script. So sometimes
Yeah.
I've written things out before I'm going to have a tough conversation or maybe a challenging one. And I also recommend to clients to do the same, to write things down. What do you want to say? Who do you want to direct it to? Because
Hmm.
it's better. It's not better. It's more effective if you choose one person. So maybe it's a group, but choose one person in the group
Hmm.
because then you'll have a more comprehensive dialogue.
This is really the pinnacle of Dear Man or Dear Woman. Oh, I'm looking forward to hearing what the W and the O is, isn't it? But this is really the crux. Everything is the preamble to this point, and this is where you actually make your request or say no. This is it, isn't it? And the thought of it can actually fill people with fear. It's a
Well, like I
it's a
said,
difficult step.
it is difficult stuff. I mean, because again, there's that fear of rejection.
Yeah.
It's
The fear
that
of
fear
rejection when you assert yourself or say no. And I think it's really important for people to realize that if you do assert yourself or you do create appropriate boundaries, it does not destroy a relationship. It actually, or at least it doesn't destroy functioning relationships. It actually enhances the quality of functioning relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
it does
Respectful
enhance.
relationships. Yeah. Respectful
That's it.
relationships are enhanced when people understand each other and know what their boundaries are and can actually productively work together within the context of boundaries.
Exactly that, and I like that word respect
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
really
And
key.
it reminds me of the phrase, good fences make good neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Good boundaries make good relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
And people should not fear the A. They do, but they shouldn't fear it.
Yeah. Well, they shouldn't, but I mean, obviously, there's some kind of life history that they do.
Hmm.
So I think it's more
Yeah.
a matter of supporting them, feel the fear, do it anyway. What's
Yeah.
your kind
Yeah.
of exploring what's your fear if you do say no? And then
Yeah.
how could you support or get support for yourself?
What does the R stand for?
The R stands for reward the person that you're making the request by letting them know of the positive consequences that will happen if the request is met. So, for example,
Hmm.
a lot of times we let people know the negative consequences. Like, if you don't do those dishes, then I'm not going out with you tonight. Or if you don't do those dishes, let's say it's to a teenager, you get no phone for the rest of the evening. But if
Hmm.
we have positive intent or positive intentions, meaning, hey, if you do the dishes, why don't we watch a movie together later tonight? Or why don't we go for a walk after? Um,
Yeah.
so you want to, again, depending on the person and the relationship, you want to reward them in some way, not like smaller children where you may give them an allowance or something for doing chores, but more for adolescents and adults. What's the reward? But not monetary. Think of something else.
For me, it's also about reinforcement. So it
Reinforcement how?
reinforces, well, I would really appreciate it if you would actually do the dishes. Is that
Okay.
rewarding? Is that the
Uh,
same?
it's not the same. You're more redoubling your efforts at the request,
That's
which
another
is
R, isn't it? Redoubling your efforts.
dear. Oh, man. Um, that's not necessarily bad or negative, but it almost sounds like pleading, and you don't want to go there
Yeah,
either.
true, true.
Yeah,
Maybe that's a bad example.
it's
Yeah.
not. It kind of takes away your assertiveness,
Hmm.
or undermines it. So you don't
Hmm.
necessarily want
All right.
to reinforce it in that regard, but you do want to. There's some, people react or respond more to the positive than negative consequences, right? Or are more likely
Yeah.
to. So you're like, okay, and how about tomorrow night? I'll do the dishes, or
Hmm.
I'll cook and do the dishes tomorrow night. Just something that's
Yeah.
positive, or I feel closer to you now that you have followed through with your commitment of doing the dishes.
Or I will feel closer to you because you followed
I
through with
will.
your
Yes,
commitment.
that's a good one.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe that's what I mean by reinforcement. Yeah, but
Hmm.
you're absolutely right. You don't want to come over as whingy, whiny, or pleady. or needy for that
No.
matter.
Or
Because you've
what?
done the A, you've done the hard yards in the A.
Yeah. So don't
Yeah,
take it back. And that's the
yeah,
other
don't take it
thing.
back.
There's a phrase I use with clients called the afterburn. So a lot of times after we make an assertive statement, we feel this guilt, this fear, this anxiety, and I call it the
Mm,
afterburn, or here in the Bay
mm,
Area, the fog. And I ask clients to just feel those feelings because they will burn off. They will
yeah.
dissipate. You just got to hang in there a little bit after you assert yourself, because sometimes that's where
Mm,
clients get trapped. So they'll assert themselves. The other person will say, well, I don't feel like it, or I'm tired. And then the person A will say, oh, okay, I'll just do them then. So you really want to try to
yeah.
have them hang in there with that assertiveness.
We've talked about the deer. I have no idea what the W and the O stand for. You're going to have to talk me through this.
So the W is to look at the whole picture. So, okay, the whole picture,
Yeah.
meaning like what you were alluding to earlier, just the facts. So the whole picture, okay, it's 9 o'clock. My partner doesn't ever like doing the dishes, but that's not my problem because that's part of our equitable trade here. And what else? Maybe I'm, keep asserting myself, redoubling my efforts, which is making them upset or more unlikely to do it. What else? Have you both had a hard day? Or is one of you more struggling with something than the other? So it's looking at the whole picture. And that's where writing a script tends to help, because you're seeing the situation from all sides instead of, oh, they're just lazy and they don't want to do it,
Yeah.
Um,
I suppose really I listen to you say that and I think about, things like extenuating circumstances for not sticking to an agreement. Like
mhm,
for instance, what if someone's just come home from work and just been laid off or lost their job? You can,
right.
when
Yeah.
when is it appropriate to cut someone a little bit of slack? You know?
I would say, depending. If this person is always, like, I'll never forget when my daughter was younger, like 11 or 12 or
Mm-hmm.
13, and it was her time to do the dishes. She would put on this towel, this coat, this raincoat, this hoodie. Like, she had such an aversion of doing the dishes, these gloves. It looks like she was going to deal with atomic matter or something. And so, I'm not, where was I going with this? So
The whole
sometimes,
picture.
so yeah, the whole picture. So if that's her attitude, and it was most days, she would get all dressed up in this funny outfit. So it's not like you had a bad grade at school or you and your friend had a fight or something. You just hate doing the
Yeah.
dishes, and sometimes we don't want to do certain things, but we still have to do it. That's part of
Yeah.
adulting. Yeah. Um,
So, I mean, that's part of the whole picture as well. If someone's always making excuses, well, that's still a holistic assessment of the situation, isn't
yeah.
it? But if someone, on occasionally slips up, well, why? Has there been an acute change in circumstances that deserve a bit of slack?
Right. And so, yeah, you've got to take
Yeah.
it piece, one situation, consider
Yeah.
all the players, and yeah.
So, would it be appropriate in W for looking at the whole picture um, would it be appropriate to consider the phrase choose your battles?
Yes, that is a really good point, because in some relationships, you know, is it really worth it if let's just say your husband, wife, or partner never want to do the dishes? So is that worth fighting over instead of maybe a different battle, such as, or maybe not battle, but like how you're raising one of your children or your children? That might
Or,
be.
and I'm just talking about playing devil's advocate and thinking about the corollary. Is choosing battle simply a way of actually constantly acquiescing to somebody else's request and having poor boundaries yourself? Is where does
Well,
the truth
that
lie?
could be. I mean, that is sometimes the case, but that's not so much choosing your boundaries as, or choosing your battles as having poor boundaries. So that's more
Yeah,
giving in because you don't want the argument. But choosing your battles
yeah,
is a little different. It's like, what's most important to you? Is it more
yeah,
important to raise your son or daughter with certain values and discuss that and hash that out? Or is it more important to get the dishes done? Or what's another way to solve it? Oh, well, let's just buy a dishwasher and just forget the whole thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's more what I mean by choosing your battles, not so much caving
Mm.
in, but
Yes,
look at
yes,
your values and your morals, and also what's most important to you.
yeah.
Um,
So
yeah.
choose your battles, but don't cave in.
Yeah, don't cave in, or choose your battles and look at what's most important to you. Um,
Yeah,
because, uh, there'll come a time when you realize, wow, that wasn't really that important. Why did I get all bent
yeah,
out of shape
yeah,
about that?
yeah.
So, yeah.
I suppose that fits into this whole idea that we've been talking about emotional regulation. And so when we're emotionally dysregulated or feeling distressed, we don't have that ability to appraise situations holistically and to choose our battles because, we're just so wound up, which is why it's really important to understand these techniques in the context of the whole, forgive my use of the word holistic again. It's important to understand this particular technique in terms of the holistic management plan for emotional
Mhm.
regulation, interpersonal effectiveness, distress tolerance, and mindfulness. It all kind of melds into one life approach, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's also, so this particular skill, though, you may need to use a crisis intervention skill first. So maybe
Yeah,
a client, if they're all wound up or emotions are running high, maybe they need to do the tip skill first
yeah.
before an interpersonal effectiveness skill.
Laura, we've run out of time today, so I was wondering if I could ask you to come back and we could talk about the oh man part of Dear Woman.
Yes.
All right, thanks very much. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Virgo.
That's all for today, folks. My name's Dr. Fergal Armstrong, and this has been Cracking Addiction.